This is a house in Kyoto, Japan that we have bought without actually even being in Japan for most of the time, and also without having a residency permit there. So in this video I'll guide you through the whole timeline of how it all happened. I will list all of the costs and expenses that occurred, and also I'll give you a full breakdown of the resources that we used, websites and so on, that we used to find the property that fitted us the best. And just for us to get a little bit more introduced, a little bit more intimate, I'm Gediminas. Hi, nice to meet you. I run two YouTube channels. One of them is educational and I mostly teach design software for designers and architects. And the second one is this channel on which you're currently watching the video right now. And this channel, Gadan, is going to be completely overrun by the Japanese house renovation project. And also, both me and my wife, we are architects. So the series should be a little bit more interesting because they're going to give the designer's perspective, as well as they're going to be a little bit more in depth in what we do and how we do things. Let's start with the timeline. So I have written down all of the notes here just so that I don't miss anything. Let's begin in 2019. This was the first time that we went to Japan, and it was love at first sight. We have fell in love with the culture, with the etiquette, with the way position themselves, with their work, the artistry, and specifically the crafts and the artistry. That really resonated with us, and I could do a whole video about this, and I probably should, but for now we'll leave it at that. After visiting it in 2019, we decided for sure we were going to come back in 2020, but that is when COVID hit and Japan closed. Then we got stuck, or not stuck, but we couldn't visit, right? So for a year, until summer of 2021, we were just waiting. And in summer of 2021, we started talking about purchasing property in Japan, an old house that we could renovate and make it into this kind of a artist retreat type of thing, a midterm stay thing, if you will. And at this point, we already knew that it shouldn't be new and it shouldn't be an empty piece of land. And then in 2021 September, things went into a higher gear. We started researching, we started gathering information, subscribing to YouTube channels, right? Trying to gather as much info as possible. At this time, we gathered all of the necessary resources, or the base resources that were needed to find a house in Japan, and I'll list all of them in the later stages of this video, or later chapters of this video. And thus the search began. Then in 2022, I started learning Japanese. And the reason for that is because as a tourist, you're fine with Google Translate, right? You can get by and it's not a problem, right? But the moment you want something to happen in Japan, I think it's safe to say that you do need Japanese language. And just a side note is that Anki, as well as Duolingo, they're really good tools for learning language, but you really need to practice actually speaking it, and that's why one of the main resources that I use to teach myself Japanese is just getting a tutor on preply.com. Not sponsored, just a good platform. And then once 2023 finally came, Japan opened up, and we knew that finally we can move forward with the purchase or with the search. And we had this Excel spreadsheet where we have listed all of the properties that we would like to visit, that we would like to check out, but we needed someone in between us and the real estate agents to actually arrange the meetings. That's when we found Steven. Steven runs koryoya.com, as well as he has a YouTube page that is dedicated to old Japanese architecture, as well as its preservation. And I will leave a link to the YouTube page in the video description below. You should definitely check it out if you're interested in the topic. He does some really great videos. Anyway, Steven has arranged 7 properties for us to visit, scattered between Osaka and Tokyo. And we visited some on our own and talked with the real estate agent with a combination of my broken Japanese as well as Google Translate. And others we visited together with Steven, simply because the real estate agents didn't want to interact with a foreigner without anyone who would be able to translate if things get out of hand, right? If there's any misunderstandings. And honestly, I think that's absolutely fair. So we got pretty damn close to purchasing one of the 7 properties that was located in Osaka, in Senan. Technically Osaka, not really. Quite close, very conveniently placed close to the airport. And we even ordered a structural inspection for that property that turned out to be around $300. And the structural inspection said that there's no major issues with the house. And the reason why we decided not to go ahead with the purchase was simply because the walk from the train station to the property was around 20 minutes, and it was a very boring walk. Also, the area statistics were not that great. The property price is devaluing year after year due to depopulation in the general area, and just the aging population in the same area. But this was an important moment because at this point in time, the priorities, the values shifted towards the value of the land having more importance, meaning the land price, the value shouldn't decrease over time, and the house should be in an area that's not suffering from depopulation, for instance. Of course, this was added on top of the initial, should be an old traditional house that's in need of renovation and should be in a nice neighborhood type of a requirement. And this meant that we will need to search closer to the cities. This meant Osaka, Kyoto, well, Tokyo is not an option, that's too expensive, but Nara and so on. And also closer to the main train lines. And because of that, we had to almost double our initial budget of 8 million yen, which is around $50,000, to 14 million yen, which became $88,000. Due to our work, we had to, of course, leave Japan and then go and do our thing. And the next time we could visit was in summer of 2024. And that was too much downtime, way too much downtime. So the way we arranged it was that Steven would visit the properties in our stead. He would take pictures and videos, would send it to us, and also give us his own opinion on the houses. And I believe he visited 6 properties in total during this whole year. Okay, so now we're getting to the good part. On May 17th, 2024, Steven visited 4 properties, and one of them was the Ryoan-Ji house. And I call it that because there's a temple, Ryoan-Ji temple, that's nearby, and also there's a train station that is right next door that has the same name. Either way, the price was 16.8 million yen. Which is out of our budget. Remember, 14 million was the limit. But it had a Machiya status. Think of it as this kind of a heritage status, which should help out with getting a bit of a subsidy from Kyoto City. And I'll make a dedicated video talking about this sometime in 2025 for sure. Also, since we would be paying for all of it in one go, without any bank loans, it would be possible to drop down the price by around 10% or so. And if both of these buts work out, then we'd be within the budget again. 13 days later, on May 17th, we have sent out an official letter of intent offering to purchase the Ryoan-Ji house for 15.3 million yen, and it was accepted. Keep in mind that at this point we are still in Europe and we haven't seen the house, we haven't been to the house, so this type of approach might not be for everyone. Before leaving for Japan, we get official affidavits providing that our signatures are the real ones, that they are correct, giving legal weight to the signatures. And it's better to do this, by the way, in your home country than it is to do it in the embassy in Japan. Things go much, much smoother that way. And then the summer of 2024 is when our third visit happens. 1 month after the letter of intent was accepted, we have met the real estate agent in person. We visited the house for the first time, inspected it, signed the purchase agreement, and paid the 10% deposit. And one interesting part about this was how thorough the real estate agent was. We sat down and he read us the full agreement, word by word, with Steven translating it word by word. The agreement had all of the information about the house, the physical state of it, the legal state of it, everything. If I remember correctly, it took around 3 hours, but honestly, definitely worth it, because this made sure that everyone is really, really on the same page. And then over the course of 3 weeks, all paperwork for the title transfer was finalized. And during this time, the remaining 90% of the price were transferred to the judicial scrivener's escrow account that then would be released or moved to the seller's account on the day of the actual title transfer and the final signatures, once those are in place. So it's basically this kind of an in-between safety box to ensure that everything goes smoothly during the final signing. On July 18th, me, my wife Aya, Steven, the real estate agent, who is also the seller in this case, as well as the judicial scrivener, we all meet for this final title transfer and key handover. We sign the documents, get all of the paperwork that's related to the Ryoan-Ji house, and at this point we're almost done. And a bit over a month later, the final property registration is complete. It has our names on it, and it's sent to us via just regular mail, regular post, because we're back in Europe at this point. And from now on, Ryoan-Ji house is, it's fully ours, right? We do what we want. Not really, but kinda. Oh, and then on the September 1st, the insurance that I have ordered kicked in. The price that you pay for, or amount you pay for the insurance, is calculated according to the price of the property, as well as, of course, the coverage plan that you take up. So we went for the most basic one, the most baseline one for now, which is wind, fire, and earthquake damage. And it costs us approximately $400 per year. Okay, and that's where we are at right now. And I wouldn't say that it was very difficult to do. And of course, with Steven's expertise, that made things much, much easier. But even on your own, it's not that bad. Of course, you need to be vigilant, in how you search for things. And Japan is indeed known for its redundant bureaucracy when it comes to these kind of things. But honestly, I haven't felt that. Compared to Swedish or Lithuanian bureaucracy, for now, what we experienced in Japan was really fine, really not a problem. So now, let's talk about money. Alright, so now with the timeline portion of the video finished, it's time to talk about the price. You know how things went down, now it's time to talk about how much did they cost. So first of all, as I mentioned before, the initial asking price for the house was 16.8 million yen, Japanese yen, which translates into around 105,000 US dollars, which was a little bit too much for us, so we negotiated. And the final price, which we negotiated to, was 15.3 million yen, which is roughly around $95,000. And that's what we paid. But of course, there's more to it, right? So it's not just the price of the house or of the land, of the property that you pay. You also need to pay a bunch of legal fees during the purchase. So the first one is the registration of transfer of ownership fee, which you pay to the judicial scrivener or through the judicial scrivener. And for us, it was 170,000 yen, which translates into around $1,000. So that's just, to move the data around and to transfer the ownership from one person to the other in terms of, who owns the property. Then we had the international service fee for the scrivener, basically them asking for extra money because they would need to translate a bunch of stuff for us, they would need to send documents abroad, and so on. So makes sense. And that was, I wrote here, 80,000 yen, which is around $500 in total. Then, since we used an escrow account for the safekeeping of the funds before they were transferred to the seller from our bank account, this in-between box that I was talking about, the escrow account management fee was resulted in another 80,000 yen, which was another $500. So now in legal fees, we're at around $2,000. And then there were a bunch of small fees that we had to pay. They were all bundled into general fees and taxes portion of the contract, and that was 92,000 yen, which is around $575 US. And that was basically all of the legal fees that we paid to the judicial scrivener to take care of the documents, and of the title transfer deed and so on. Besides the fees for the scrivener, we had to also pay the property tax, and we will have to pay the property tax annually. Since our property is quite old and it's the square meters, there's not a lot of square meters. I believe it's 76 square meters in total. The property tax for it is 25,000 yen per year, which is $160 per year. So it's honestly nothing, compared to the price of the house. And of course, besides that, there's going to be electricity, water, and gas and so on, all of these fees. But currently, all of them are disconnected from the house. All of these services are disconnected from the house, and we will only reconnect them after the construction or reconstruction has been finished, right? So right now, we don't need to pay anything. What we do need to pay is insurance. When you buy a house in Japan, you have to insure it, and we chose one of the cheapest insurance plans that we could, and we will ramp up the insurance plan once we actually reach the end of the renovation, right? So right now, as the house is quite old, we are just kind of insuring it with the most basic plan, which covers wind damage, it covers earthquake damage, and it covers fire damage. Right now, what we pay is 55,000 yen per year, which results in around $400 per year. So if we just were to keep the house as it is and not touch it, every year we would need to pay for it $560 per year. Then, of course, we had assistance from Steven. Really thankful for him for his services, and the services in total over the course of 2 years have costed us 225,000 yen, which is around $1,500. And then the future costs, right? So the planned renovation costs. We have seen a quote from one of the contractors that was made for that particular house for a different potential buyer, and the quote was for 25 million yen. And so that's where we're aiming at. Honestly, in the back of my head, I have my hopes, not hopes, but I'm aiming more towards 30 million yen, but 25 I think is also doable, manageable, which is around $150,000, but we will pay that over the course of the next 5 years. So it will be amortized. Amortized? Am I using the word correctly? I'm not sure. Anyway, so of course you have the prices, some were listed in the graphics on the screen, and my hopes are that this gives you a little bit more transparency, a little bit more of an insight of all of the fees and all of the different costs that involve purchasing a house in Japan without really being in Japan. Anyway, Let's talk about the resources that we used. Alright, so the last part, the resources part, I will do by the computer screen, showing you the resources on the screen itself. I think it makes sense. And we start with the Excel spreadsheet. In this spreadsheet, basically we constructed it to create a system out of all of the properties that we wanted to visit, that we were looking into. If we find something, we add into this spreadsheet and so on. So this was one of the main resources that we constructed ourselves. So on the left-hand side, we had two main websites through which we are looking for available properties. One is called sumo.jp, Japanese website, and the second one is called myhomenifty.com, myhome.nifty.com. Also Japanese website. You'll see for Nara Prefecture as well as for Kyoto Prefecture a third link, which is basically the same website, the myhomenifty.com website, except that it has different filtering options in it. So if I were to just open up any one of these, let's go for Kyoto Prefecture, myhomenifty.com. They're all the same, so I'll just show you one. This link that we had already had filtering set up within it, so the filtering is built into the link, but you can easily construct the filtering yourselves. So if I right click and I just choose to translate to English, suddenly my life becomes much easier. And I'll just guide you through the filters that we used to search, right? So the first thing was the selected area. We were looking within Kyoto Prefecture, around Kyoto City. And then the second thing within the area, which were sub areas that we were looking for, towns and so on. So if I look into this, I was basically opening up a map, typing in the name of the city or the town and looking if it's close by a major train line or if it's close by a major city. And the ones that seemed to be a little bit more on the convenient side of things, I would just put a tick mark, So that's how we filtered out this portion. Then for the property type, we just chose used detached houses, so old stuff. Then for the sales price, here it says under 10 million yen. Actually, at the later stages of our search, we increased this to under 20 million yen, but for now I'll keep this at under 10 million. 10 million yen, as I'm recording this video, is $70,000 US. Back in here, right? So that was the filtering for up to $70,000. A very important filter was time from a nearest train station. We set it to be within 15 minutes. That means that the house would not be completely detached from any infrastructure and would not require us to have a car in Japan. We did add a filter for houses that were slightly outside of the cities to be over 70 square meters in their size. And then, a special condition, we would like it to be owned rather than rented long term. And that's it. Then the website presents you with options, and you just go through the options trying to find a pretty one. Don't see, this one is kind of nice. Seems like it has a nice gate and so on. Then I would just open it up, take a look at it. Nantan City, Kyoto Prefecture. Where the hell is Nantan City? It should be shown somewhere here. There we go. Right at the end, you usually get a map. You can see that it's right next to a JR train line, which is nice. And then if we zoom out more and more, we will see that it's actually to the north of Kyoto in the mountains, right? Well, not mountains, but in a more mountainous area that is a little bit less urbanized compared to Kyoto and Osaka area. So that is probably one of the reasons why this particular property is quite a bit cheaper compared to others. Of course, other things might include the state of the property, even though through the pictures it doesn't seem like it's in a bad condition whatsoever. And a really nice garden. Hey, this is a pretty nice one. So if we would like this property, we would take it, copy, and just paste it in here as one of the possible potential properties that we would later send this whole link to Steven, and then he would visit the property in our stead. And I would just write down the price for it, which was 6.9 million yen. And then I had this 1 million yen to euros conversion, which I can probably just do by dragging this out. So it becomes 40,000 euros. And then I would also write down the size of the floor here, 98 and land 469. 98 469. Then I would write down how close is it to the nearest station, which is Goma station. 11 minutes walk, 11 minutes. And then to nearest central station from Goma station, we would be going to Kyoto Central Station. So for that, I would just use maps.google.com, Goma station. Let's see if it finds it. Seems like it did. Sometimes you need to type it in Japanese, so you just copy paste the station name, and we would just add directions to Kyoto station. It takes 1 hour 6 minutes, so I'll round it out to 60 minutes to Kyoto. And now there are these 3 areas that we still need to look into. Oh, and these 2 would be green because it's good. The price is good. These 3 areas that we need to look into. To actually understand the appraisal of the land, does the land price increase or decrease over time, we would need to use a third resource, which is this Kyoto land price test. If I open this up, it's tochodai.info. Here, the problem is that if I translate to English, this portion of the website, which is a very important portion, does not translate, which means that we kind of need to navigate through this in Japanese. Don't worry. The way you do this is if you just right click and don't translate this website into English, then usually if you just find, what's the name? The name of the train station. This kanji is for train station, which means that this is the name for it. If you just copy that and paste it into the search bar here and remove the weird symbols, fingers crossed, hopefully it's going to find it. And it does. So it finds this area and it finds 2 properties that were sold in this area recently. And unfortunately, both of them were sold at a, well, not a loss, but you can see appraisal of the land going down, right? So minus 2.52% every year. I go back in here, I type in minus 2.52, and this would immediately be the red flag for which we would not go further with purchasing this property. But just to finish up this, the way of how we create it, I would go in here and 1,1,200 go hyaku go ju en. So 12,550 yen per square meter. 12,550 yen per square meter. And then all I need to do is just multiply the price per square meter times the price of the land. And I would get, what's the average price that you should expect to pay within that land? 4.2 million yen. So this also makes the house overpriced. It is what it is. And you can see even the price graph ever since the year 2000 was just going down. So this property would not make it, and we would not use it, right? But basically that's the Excel spreadsheet, that's the resource that we used, and we would construct this list, and then we would filter out only the properties that we really want to see, and then we would send it to Steven. Speaking of whom, Steven owns koryoya.com, link in the video description below, all of the links in the video description below, where all of the nice townhouses and so on in Kyoto area and Hyogo area, I believe, are listed. I believe if I were to just say by house type, Machiya houses, and just scroll through all of these different available Machiya houses, Ryoan-Ji, Kyo Machiya, sold. There it is. That's our property. So these websites, or this website, koryoya.com, is aimed at foreigners and helping out foreigners with purchasing, purchasing these houses. If you choose one of these, then it's a little bit more, even more streamlined than usual. Another another website that does this exact thing, except for I believe they don't help you with the purchase, is Hachise. Hachise is a little bit more expensive. If we go to the property list, they do have some renovated properties, they have some old ones, and I believe right now if I just filter through the lowest price property is nothing spectacular. And the first one that we would definitely start looking into would, is 15.8 million, $112,000. So Hachise.com a little bit more expensive, but you might find something there as well. And the last resource that I would like to note is a newsletter, Cheap Houses Japan. And basically you just subscribe for, I don't know, I don't remember, $10 per month, something like that. And every week you get a newspaper, like a newsletter, like a listing of all of the new available properties. There's basically a person who is going through, scouring the websites and trying to find the best deals on these old cheap houses in Japan, and then listing them for you to look into and choose, and if you like it, to purchase, right? So that's the last resource that I wanted to show you. So overall, those were the resources that we used, and that was honestly enough to just make a decision of purchasing the house, the Ryoan-Ji house. And for an outro, I just want to say, do whatever you want to do. Other people will try to impose their way of life on you. Don't listen to them. It's not worth it. It's better to get a rough lesson rather than to live your life full of what ifs, full of regret. I'll see you in the next one. Later. Next month's video is already out on Patreon. If you support the channel, you can see it now. And also ask me questions. Here.